What's up everyone? In this video, I'm going to be covering the indicator reports on edgeful.com specifically for options trading. So just before I start, I want to make sure that you already watched the price action and volume reports. There's no order actually that you need to watch them in, but I highly recommend you watch these two if you're an options trader or trying to learn how to trade options. So in this one specifically, I'm just going to cover the indicator reports. So we're going to start off by looking at the ATR report. We're going to stick to SPY on this one, and we're going to be looking at the trailing 1 year. So in this case, what this report is measuring is the ATR, the average true range, which is just, if you can think about it, just a high level. I'm not going to get into calculation, just how much the stock moves in a certain day from the high to the low. It's not the exact calculation, but for the most part, that's how it works. If you want to look at the exact calculation, just look it up. It's very, very simple. It has to do with the close. It's not something that I want to explain right now, just for the sake of the explanation here. The way to look at it, just so you know, is we always have the current 14-day daily ATR, which is what we look at always, only the daily, not the intraday timeframes. And you can just go right here, type in ATR. It's going to be that first one, and it's going to come up. Just make sure you're on the daily timeframes. Here, I'll just actually show you here. Right here, ATR. And right there, this is the ATR that you're going to be looking at. So I'm just going to take that off, and I'm going to go into this report. So as an options trader, how do you use ATR and how do you use this report? So what this report measures is how often does price stay within the daily ATR from the high to the low, or how often does it exceed that daily ATR? So today, the 14-day ATR is $5.70. So this is actually yesterday's, and this is always the one we use. We always use yesterday's ATR because it's set in stone, it doesn't change. So the ATR from today, the reason that we don't use it is because it changes throughout the day. So we always compare to yesterday's because it's set in stone, it doesn't move. So in the last year, price is going to stay below this $5.70 today 63% of the time. So you always want to look at yesterday's ATR, which will always update right here, and say, I understand that 63% of the time it's going to stay, today's high and low is going to be below this number, which means $5, $4, $3, $3.50, $5.50, it doesn't matter. Anything less than this falls into this category here, the respected category. Then the opposite side of that is this blue area, which only happens 37% of the time. So that means that price moved from the high to low today $6 or $7 or $6.50 or $8 or $20. It doesn't matter. Anything greater than this $5.70 happens 37% of the time. So how do you use this? You want to maximize your trades by taking your profits within that range, within this daily ATR. So if you're in a trade and it's going in your favor, you don't want to set your profit targets at what would make the daily range $8 or $9, because historically it's going to reverse before it even gets to $5.70. So maximizing your trades by taking your profits, and you can leave runners, of course, if there's good momentum, but taking your profits before that ATR will help you maximize your trades and maximize your wins without getting reversed on and trying to squeeze every last cent out of your trade. So very interestingly, you'll know this by watching the volume report type video that I made for options traders, so make sure you watch that. When you look at this by weekday, now I'm going to go to the Mondays. 80% of Mondays in the last year have respected the ATR, which means that 80% of Mondays have been less than the daily ATR at the time. So what that means is these are not days where you want to go for home runs. These are days where you take what you can get, you bat for singles, you bat for doubles, you do not try to squeeze you don't go for home runs, you don't try to squeeze every ounce out of this trade, because you're going to be probably sitting in choppy price action. Then you go into the rest of the week. You can see that Thursdays actually are the days that have these bigger moves that actually exceed ATR 47% of the time. So these are days where you hold on to your winners, you hold on to some runners because the moves are bigger. These are days where you can set your profit targets a bit further out. That's all for options buying. Now, for options selling, Mondays, selling vertical spreads is actually very good because you have a very strong understanding of a very small range. So you have high confidence in price staying within a certain range, which means that if you sell the strikes outside of that range, now you have a very high win rate right here. So it's very unlikely for price to put your options in the money. For option sellers, the people who are more, they understand what I'm talking about, that's what you want. You do not want your strikes to go in the money when you're an options seller. Thursdays as an options seller are not fantastic days because they're far more likely for your options to go in the money. So that's how you can use this report specifically as an options trader, whether you're on the long or for a buyer or a seller of options. Then I'm going to show you the ADR report. This is the average daily range. But this one is, and just so you know, the average daily range is literally just the high minus the low divided by 5, which in this case we use the 5-day ADR. And the way that you find that is you go to the indicators, type in ADR, and you can see average day range. We're on the daily time frame, of course, and now we go to yesterday's, let's just zoom in here a little bit. You go to yesterday's candle, and then you can see, perfect. So happy this happened. We use the 5-day ADR. So you have to make sure that you update the length of the ADR to 5. This is a little shorter time frame here. And you can see right here, once I hover over the correct day, that ADR is $3.67, which is what we have here. So ADR, we just use it's a shorter time frame. And this report was actually by request. So you can actually request reports up here. And that's why we use the 5-day instead of the 14, which is 14 is a standard. But it's the same exact concept. How often does it stay? How often does it respect or exceed the ADR? You can see that right here. You can also look at this by weekday as well. So you can see Thursdays actually exceed the ADR almost 60% of the time in the last year. And Mondays respect that ADR 72% of the time. So same concept that I said for ATR. It's just a shorter time frame, so this is a more recent number that you're going to see here, and it will change and fluctuate a lot more because it's only a 5-day average versus a 14-day average. The other ones that I want to point out here are the pivot point report. So here, I'm going to remove this indicator, and I'm going to go into a 15-minute. I'm going to go to the indicators. I'm going to go to invite only because we have these custom indicators which you can request right here. And all you have to do is send us your TradingView username, which is right here. So you click on that profile button, then you click right here, or you just read your username and send it to us when you click this button. So go to the indicators, go to invite only, go to pivot points, and now click on that. And now you're going to see these prices or these lines automatically plotted on your chart. So you can see what this report measures is the pivot points. For those of you who are not familiar with what this is, please watch this video down on the report page. But let me explain what this report does. So you can see it starts off to the left here as opening between two levels. So you can see this one, we open between the pivot point and R1. So I want to click on pivot point and R1. So we open between the R1 and the pivot point. And then what this table shows you is for every time that we've opened between these 2 points, how often do we touch each of these levels, R3, R2, R1, etc. So these will automatically update when you have our TradingView indicator on. So how often does it touch each of these levels? So you can see that in this case, we actually did touch, or we might have just barely touched this pivot point. And the pivot point gets touched 59% of the time. R1 will get touched 65% of the time, which is the highest of any point. In this case, it did. So you can get long targeting this area. Now R2 gets touched 27% of the time, so a little bit less, which it did get touched. But R3, now this is important, R3 only gets touched 7% of the time, and in this case, it did not get touched. So R3 is all the way up here, very unlikely for it to get touched, only happens 7% of the time. So how do you maximize your trade here? You target here, you can leave runners, but you don't want to target all the way up here to R3. The other way that you can use this as an option seller is to say, if I have an understanding that price is going to touch these levels, most often I can sell strikes above this area or below these areas where it's unlikely for price to go. Then this table to the right is where does price tend to close on the day most frequently. So as a reminder, we are only looking at the times where price has opened between R1 and the pivot point. So for price opening between these two levels. This shows you that for the most part, price will move around and then fall back in between and close on the day between R1 and pivot point. So 43% of the time, which is the most out of anything here, it will close back over here. Obviously, it didn't happen today, but nothing in trading is 100%. Everything is a game of probabilities. So the way that you can use this is to say, if I don't expect S2 to be touched, and I also don't expect price to close in S2, I can sell options down here. So that's the way that you can use some of the indicator reports. As an options trader, please make sure to check out the other reports that we have and always watch the videos. The videos will explain exactly how to use each one of them. If you have any questions, you can also reach out to our support. But please make sure, as if you're an options trader, make sure to check out the videos that we made for the price action reports and volume reports. It will give you an entire breakdown on how you can start trading options using edgeful and actually having data on your side. So thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful.